Busisiwe Mavuso, the Eskom board member and head of business leadership South Africa, says the board should be held accountable for the decisions that they've made during their tenure. However, they cannot answer for matters that predate the board. Mavuso got into a heated exchange with Scopa chairperson Mkhwanazi, where she ended up leaving that meeting. Well, let's find out how. Let's talk about just the code of conduct that governs board members of SOEs. We're joined now by corporate and trade lawyer at Mkhwanazi Inc. That's Ronny Mkhwanazi. Ronny, good evening and thank you so much for your time. Look, I take it you've had the opportunity to look at that exchange that took place between Scopa and the Eskom board more generally and particularly with Busi Mavuso. Do you think that there were questions that were being asked of her that she was deflecting in her responses? And I ask this because that's the reasoning that has been given by the chair for ultimately having kicked her out.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me, Kathy, and for the viewers at home. Look, I think in terms of the specific questions that were asked, Kathy, I wouldn't say I watched the whole, proceeding, which obviously might be misquoted if I had to comment on that. But I think the fundamental principle which you actually wanted to raise regarding the questioning and the responsibility of the board, insofar as you mentioned in your introduction, previous, tenures are concerned, is an issue that needs to be clarified, I believe. So, when you are appointed as a board member, you assume, the role of a fiduciary over the company, which means you are responsible for its success and to act in its best interest. And unfortunately, a company is a going concern. It will have historical, issues and so on. But when you become a board member, you literally assume those, responsibilities, plans, and strategies that the previous boards would have, implemented had they continued in their term. So you cannot therefore wash your hands and stand on the side and say, listen, I wasn't there, I can't answer for that. But of course, it's also understandable that, whoever is doing the oversight and reporting at the time must have had some, prior information relating to what happened in the company, and also to have a sense of appreciation that the board that is there at that particular point in time, yes, is responsible for the success of the company ultimately, but to some extent you need to understand the dynamics and the fact that it's a long-term plan that is in play, and it's not a quick fix where someone can come in and be a board member for 1 or 2 years and suddenly the whole organization is changed. So it's a long-term game, Kathy, which I think we need to get right in terms of our framework that governs SOCs.
And that's a big issue because often what we see in a lot of these SOEs is that, there are things that happen under one board and then that is quickly changed around. Those problems that have been left behind are inherited by a group of completely different people. And before they have the opportunity to do anything, they could well be removed from those positions. And there's a new group of people, and we've seen it across the board at different SOEs. And it really speaks to politics. I don't want to say political interference because that in and of itself has a completely different meaning. But the instability that we see at board level really plays a big role in ultimately how these companies fare in the long run.
That's so true, Kathy. And I think the fundamental issue here starts at how the boards get appointed, And of course, we know that politicians, for example, ministers, etc., who are the shareholders of these SOCs, have a 5-year term. And sometimes they will be reshuffled, halfway through. And then, of course, another minister comes in and he says, I don't like Ronny because, Ronny wasn't appointed by me, was appointed by someone else. I need someone I can trust. And he then decides when, whether or not the term of the previous board ends, he has the, ultimate authority in terms of how he wants to deal with that. Decides to, remove the board and bring in another board, or subsequent boards that come in, are then people who are new to the business, have no clue what's happening in the organization. And as a consequence, what then happens is that you find this huge rift between boards and executives because in the main, you generally, in the past few years, you've seen appointment to boards of people who should not be on those boards, in a sense that they do not firstly have the appreciation of what it means being a board member. They do not have, any skill, or whether in business or otherwise. And yet these people, because, they are at the right place at the right time, are able to get appointed to this board. So unless we sort that out, Kathy, and this is a universal problem, because the UK, for example, sits with the same issue, where the ministers, the shareholder ministers, are the ones who appoint the boards. And as a result, they also suffer the same issues around board continuity, around stability of organizations, and so forth. So that is really the core of what the causes of the instability are within these organizations.
Ronny Mkhwanazi, let's leave it there for this evening. Thanks for your time.